because I have plans this evening, and regardless of how long it takes to do the illustration aspect of things, maybe I'll start doing this with a pencil. 1 second, I'm gonna sneeze. Okay. The amount. Hello, Cycron. Starting into things in the evening. Thank you, Stefan. I did sneeze. I've got these bright lights, and sometimes it helps if I look at bright lights to sneeze. I'm actually going to do this as sketch out drawing bit and then come back. Today I'm gonna do some figures. It's a little bit blown out. Let's see if I can get it better. That's easier to see if there's some dark behind it. But I'm sketching it out first because in the past when I've tried to do figures directly using ink as a start off, I end up with some weird sort of shapes happening. And so if I do it in pencil sketched out first, then I can make adjustments. There's also the fact that having these as solid figures, the outlines have to accommodate for the solid elements. If that makes sense. So when you draw something, in order to have lines in here, you have to draw the negative space in there, the white elements. And so you have to sort of almost treat it like a stencil or something. But I think I'll have more success if I do this in pencil and sort of account for the negative space from the beginning rather than after the fact. And I can play a little bit more with what specifically is sort of happening. Make it a little bit tighter. Let's see. Let's say I got a hello from Mr. Artist, hello back, and a hello from Amrish Meg. Hello to Amrish. I haven't done a softer or more organic curved figure drawing in a minute. So I wanted to do that. Happy Halloween, folks. Thanks, Cheez-It, baby. I had some Cheez-Its earlier today. This one will not be animated. This will be a still because I have less time today. It's the weekend. Which it seems like I should have less time on the weekday, but that's not how stuff tends to work for me. I'm far more likely to have some family. It's interesting how Zoom has taken over as like that understanding of like it just means remote meeting. Where for the longest time it was always Skype. Skype was the shorthand for that. And I still don't understand how Zoom took over. I guess Zoom had more prepared for business settings. And if you create something that people like learn as a requirement, that can then become the default. I can't think of other examples right now, but there have to be other examples of like if you, sorry, a little bit runny of a nose because I sneezed a minute ago. Having a standard thing made by making it what was standard in the workforce. Thanks, Elvis. If you're making comments I'm not seeing them, I apologize. It's not my intention to not see anyone's message, but sometimes that's how it goes. Hello, Sophia. Happy Halloween. Totally human. Totally human. Totally human. I might try to sort of generally square it up on this sort of bit. Just make a weird neck here. Did make that soup last night. I'm gonna have it for dinner again tonight because there was a lot of soup. This leg. This will be a still. This would be a lot of work to draw more than a few times. Right now, because these figures are a little bit more sort of temperamental in how they behave, and that there are sections where... So, I'm going to try and do this with... Not a good clean sheet or semi-clean sheet. And do I got this Sharpie on me? Yeah, I do. Okay. So the instinctual thing when you have this sort of figure going here is it's just draw the figure as the lines. And go that route. But the issue with having the figure drawn out like this is that if I go in and fill in the solids, all of these details get lost when I just come back in to fill in the solid bit. So instead, what you have to do is draw the white outlines with the black. So that when you come back in and I'm going to have to wipe my hand down. When you fill in the solids, you have those white negative spaces that preserve those implied shapes. So you don't just have this black mass. And with that, that's easier to keep track of when you work in pencil. And so I'll come back after this and do the outlines in ink. And hopefully won't make many mistakes in the process, but there's a decent likelihood that I'll have an issue or two. That leg's weird. Have a gap there. So now I'm going to come back. Oh, happy Halloween going to a graveyard. It sounds a bit more Dia de los Muertos. And then American Halloween. There's a chance that I end up using my light table for this just because it'll make things a little bit easier. Is today Dia de los Muertos? I know that it's sort of split up. Feliz Dia de los Muertos. That's like the holiday that well, mañana, November 1st. Maybe I'll watch Coco tomorrow. I can't think of any other movies that are focused on Dia de los Muertos. That's probably cultural to me. Dia de los Muertos is always the okay, maybe that was a bad idea. The holiday that you get to talk about in Spanish, and you make the papel picado. Is that what it's called? The cut out tissue paper I enjoy cocoa. It makes you sad at the end. But happy sad. Sad sad, happy sad. It's got red on it. Papel picado. What does picado mean? I forget what picado means. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, I'm going to start the center, I guess. This is just going to be outlined and then I'll fill it in digitally because that'll save me a lot of time and I'm not as particular about it with stills. It's just about 4 p.m. here. Okay. I like watching like traditional artisans, traditional people make it, traditional artisans making papel picado using like a chisel and punching it down into a bunch of layers. Makes me want to try it, but I feel like I would ruin a bunch of tissue paper and a bunch of chisels. But it makes sense for creating like 30 sheets cutting through it at once. Something that we would do in Spanish class now and again. And you get to find out that a lot of people aren't great at using X-Acto blades. And can't read paper and how the grain of the paper affects how you cut it. I've never seen it live. I've never seen someone do the like massive sheets. Or massive stacks in person. The only time I've ever been to Mexico, went to one was a cruise thing. I'm gonna attack children with candy. I went to, we landed in I think Cancun on the cruise and then took a tour bus to Cozumel, which I enjoyed seeing those ruins and also all the iguanas that were around there. And then the other time we just straight up went to Cancun. And you get a lot better limes and avocados than anything you do around in Jersey. But I don't really know Mexico all that well. But I like Mexican art and food that's like deceptively complex and simple at the same time. I like making simple taco sort of things where it's like you can have very complex and very simple tacos at the same time because there's a lot that goes into the salsas and the like simple flavorings of the meats and such, but then you have something like mole that's got 50 ingredients. And try. So that soup thing that I made with my sister, we've been making different recipes during COVID stuff remotely. And at some point I was like, I kind of want to try and make like authentic enchiladas. Enchiladas. I'm gonna try and sound cultural, but instead just sound like I'm saying things incorrectly, which is a nice liberal waspy thing of me to do. But it was like a bunch of steps at the start that I did not know where to get all those different kinds of peppers to start into the enchilada. I'm going to zoom in a little bit again. But shift. Middle out. So I did not make enchiladas because I did not know where to find the like 4 different kinds of peppers that it had you roast and then puree and then do all these other things. For salsa, the only thing I make is like pico de gallo, and even then I get mixed results. We don't really get trick-or-treaters here where I'm at. I also don't know what it's just going to look like in general. But usually what it is around here is that people go to the businesses that are on like a strip, a main street, and they just go in and get candy from the businesses. I have not. I think I've tried chicharron. Gotta roll the R. Because it's the double R. That's what I remember from Spanish class. Spanish class, it's always fun when like you try to teach people in the class, or people are trying to learn how to roll their R, and you just have a bunch of people going my little sister can't roll an R, so it's funny to there's a lot of fat in chicharron. I forget the name. There's a Filipino thing that's pretty similar to that, and it's sort of in the same vein as pork rinds. Take something fatty and you deep fry it. Can't think of what it is. What it is called in the Philippines. What kind of meat is I have no idea how to start saying anything in a Russian accent that doesn't sound like I'm making fun of it or something. Never really taken the time. There's a lot of Russian folks in Russian sort of restaurants. If you go like out into Brooklyn, closer to like Coney Island. And also now is not the time to really be exploring in that way. I don't really know what Russian cuisine is, other than the only thing that I default to thinking of is borscht. Which I'm not actually sure if I've had. Recently, okay. Recently, I made some sticky buns. It's kind of like a cinnamon roll if you're not familiar, but it's got pecans on it. And it makes me think of, there was a specific bakery that we'd go to when I was younger. And they had giant sticky buns. But after making it, there's like a caramel sort of topping that goes on top, and part of the thing that you have to that includes, what is it, like heavy cream, but you only use like a quarter cup, and you can't really buy a quarter cup of heavy cream, and I don't use heavy cream for anything else, so I had a bunch left over, and I decided to make butter. Didn't say my T very strong there. Decided to make butter, which all you do is you take heavy cream or whipping cream and you agitate it for a long time, and then eventually it separates out and you can have butter. And so I still have some of that butter, but it doesn't taste particularly like anything. I was talking to a friend about doing that, and within the last few years, he found out that he's like very allergic to horses, or at least like horse dander, and so I make fun of him for it sometimes. But I was curious whether or not, because you can make milk, or you can milk like any mammal, conceivably. Mammals produce milk, but I was curious if you could make horse milk and whether or not he would be allergic to, or not make horse milk, but if you could make horse butter or have like horse milk, and you can make horse milk butter. And what made me think of it is that I don't know any Russian cuisine really, but when I was looking up whether or not people made horse butter, there was I found that there's a drink, I forget what it's called, but fermented mare's milk, and it is popular, and it probably had to do just with like seeing that calves drink milk like human babies drink milk, and trying it out for yourself and being like, that's fine. But there's in like, I can't think of it. I can't think of the region, but there's some like former Soviet countries that the fermented mare's milk is a more common drink. I'm gonna look it up. Well, I think Mongolia, there's some like mare's milk. I might be saying it incorrectly, but uh, kumis, Kumis, fermented dairy product made from mare's milk or donkey milk. Uh, Mongol origin, then also the Kazakhs, Bashkirs, Kalmyks, Kazurks, Mongols, and Yukuts are people who like or have a tradition of kumis, Kumis, fermented mare's milk. Mentioned it to my dad, and he was not into the idea. Hello in Belarus. Hope you're doing okay. Watch me paint this thing. Wait, am I in frame? Yeah, I got distracted thinking about that mare's milk. Okay, yeah, I'm in frame. Apparently why we don't milk pigs is because they don't do well. They don't like people milking them. Because conceptually it would make sense if we farm pigs and they're a mammal, that we'd milk them the same way that you can milk cows, goats, and such. But they're not into it. They don't do well. You can look it up. I don't know what the tradition would be in different, more in the Americas, if there's any tradition of using horse milk for stuff. Yeah, most of the only things that I know for Russian cuisine tend to be stuff that's just people talking about vodka. Hello, Adrian. If you shake it too much, you might make some horse butter. I'm guessing that how people discovered butter is just they carried milk and then accidentally shook it. Thank you, D. Wilkes. I'm glad. Thank you, Peach. Unless your name is P. Shay. Which might be. Don't make me laugh. That's just me seeing and realizing different ways that I think I've talked about it before, but there was someone who I started following a while ago and didn't really know him super well. I met him at a party, like a friend's birthday party, and we were talking about Instagram, and they were like, "Here's my Instagram," and I did not remember his name afterwards. I'm bad with names. But continued to follow them on Instagram, and in my mind, I assumed what his name was based on his handle, and his handle was YESIAM. was the first part of the name. And so in my mind, I didn't remember his name, and I was like, oh, his name is Yaseem. And then, like 2 years later, I realized, oh, that's not his name. I forget what his actual name is, but his handle was saying, yes, I am. Well, okay, dear is okay. Hope your mom's okay. This makes me think of a Mythbusters that was about the idea that if you are about to hit a moose, that it's better to speed up because you'll hit the legs, clear it, and then the moose will just sort of pop up instead of hitting the full mass. Because mooses, I don't know the plural of moose. Is it just moose? No, I think it's mooses. Anyway, they're huge and they can be tall enough to where, like, depending on what your car is, you could clear underneath, like just sweep the legs and then clear the upper body if you were conceivably moving fast enough. I'm not familiar with Kai Bell. I do like looking at fertility sort of things. Most often people say this looks like Pacific Northwestern artwork. Some Inuit. I don't know specific tribe names of Pacific Northwestern tribes. I'm going to look up Kaibel. Keeble? Saibo? Saiboli. Okay. I'm getting a mix. Some of this is Greek. Okay. Moose is plural? Okay. There was a Mythbusters where they did a thing where they drove faster, accelerated to make it so they would conceivably clear it. Chance that I'm not in frame right now. It's pretty close. Okay. I don't read as much as I used to. So I don't know that I have a favorite book. I don't know the last book I read in full. I started to read Yiddish Policeman's Union, and I enjoyed it at the start. I'm not good at finishing books. But it's an interesting concept for a book. It's like alternative, not exactly science fiction, but kind of. It's an alternative timeline where post World War II, Israel is a failed state, and the United States founded refugee state for Jewish refugees post World War II in Alaska. And then it's a murder mystery set against that sort of backdrop. But it creates a culture that's based in elements of reality and Jewish culture, but places it in a different environment, and how that would affect and change things. I didn't get very far into it, but it was interesting what I did read. And it gave me a good example of when I think about writing that I enjoy, that's specific and descriptive and efficient. There's a moment early on where the main character, who's investigating a murder, explores a cellar sort of space or a basement space, and the author describes the area and says that like nothing was there except like a lone naked light bulb, or the bulb was naked, and that as a description is efficient and conveys a different sense of like a bare light bulb doesn't sound as vulnerable or sort of haphazard as a naked bulb. And so I think about that when I'm thinking about things of clear descriptions that are succinct, that have a good economy of words. I learned that sort of term in design class, economy of design. This is just a still image. How is it now? 4:30-ish. But economy of design, the idea that you don't use an excess of visual information. You are succinct and don't include a lot of excess information, and saying naked bulb instead of there was a light bulb that didn't have any covering over it takes a lot more words and doesn't give you as clear an understanding of what the space and the feeling of that experience would be. Naked bulb. I like explaining things. Helps me to better understand what it is that I'm actually saying. It's also off track because the question you asked was what my favorite book is, and I don't think I have one. Growing up, I was the right age, like as Harry Potter was getting older, as the books were released, I was hitting just about those same ages, so there was a sense of camaraderie with that being sort of it's like as their experiences get more complex, my experiences got more complex. and aged and such. And I'm trying to think of books that I didn't really have to read any full books in college because I went to art school. I had to read sections of books or aspects of things. In high school, I had to read more books. I enjoyed Of Mice and Men. All right. It's a sad book. I liked Of Mice and Men better. We had sophomore year, I think. We had to read, the curriculum for my state was, maybe it was, I don't know. Anyway, the focus was American literature. And so we read that. We read, what else did we read? Catcher in the Rye, which just sort of gets you to have something of an annoying dude. Everyone's a phony. Depends what age you are and what sort of person you are as to whether or not you enjoy that book. Not blaming anybody who does, but if you don't ever go back and think about it later on in life as to why you so loved someone who wanted to do like a weird protection of innocence while not having any sense of personal innocence. It's like preserving a ideology or something that isn't your age, but you have to go past it. I don't know. What else did we read? We read The Crucible, and I liked that one. But that's a play, I think, primarily. I forget a lot. This feels dumb. Hey, froggy person. I like your icon. Seems fitting for your handle. The Crucible, I think, was a play. It's an Arthur Miller. He wrote it. But it's an allegory. I do know Sudoku. I enjoy it when I come to it, but then I also much prefer to do Sudoku digitally just because I like being able to be told if I'm wrong, as a matter of fact sort of deal, where if I'm filling it in, I always second guess that I either did it correctly or I check the answers and I find out that I did it incorrectly and try to figure out how much I did do correctly. So I like doing it on my phone every now and again. I'll download a Sudoku app or something. But The Crucible is an allegory. I might be using that word wrong. But it's about McCarthyism in the United States, about the Red Scare and people in Hollywood and such being arrested for being communists or communist sympathizers, where it's a difficult thing and people were made to announce anyone who was a communist, and trials of something where it's revealing someone's ideology and being arrested for that, which is not very great because it's not something that like you can be like, you murdered someone, you're going to jail. It's you think this, you're going to jail. And you can misrepresent what people's thoughts are to prove that someone thinks in a communist way. Not great for personal liberties. Thanks, Stefano. I think is what your name is. But the Crucible is putting that sort of concept against, or within the context of, I don't know if it's specifically Salem, but witch trials in the United States, right? I think that's what it is, like proving someone's a witch or not. I'm confusing it sometimes with the Scarlet Letter. I forget which one has John Proctor. I don't know if this is true for anybody else, but as I'm thinking back on these books, I'm not thinking about the books. I'm thinking about my experiences in that classroom and what that classroom looked like and how it made me feel being in that classroom, and less so the actual narrative or the imagined space that I created after reading those stories. Scarlet Letter also deals with false accusations and who becomes the victim in those scenarios. Okay, finding my style, drawing things for a while, and just figuring out what I liked and what I could sort of repurpose in different ways. I don't have any books on animation that inspired me. Hello, Kay. Lord of the Flies, I think, is a good book. I enjoy that one. People get mixed messages from it, depending on who's reading it. I read it at like too young of an age, I think, where kind of like I read through The Little Prince, or The Petit Prince, Le Petit Prince. That's as much French accent as I'm going to throw out there. And I was like, cool, this is a book about a guy who's going from planet to planet, and he's a little guy. And that's it. That's all the description of The Little Prince. And he's on some money. I think he's on French money, or was at some point. Maybe I'm wrong. And I have never gone back and revisited that narrative, but I know that it's more complex than that. When I read Lord of the Flies, it just freaked me out because I was of an age where, like, I was a similar age as the children in the book, and I was like, I like Simon and I like Piggy. Oh no, they're killing people. And so I like the fact that, like, the base concept of something like Lord of the Flies is, hi, these like sophisticated kids don't know anything and will immediately kill each other if they have to and get freaked out by things. And glasses, very important for starting fires. I don't know. I don't think I have a strong enough prescription to easily start a fire with my glasses. gotten better with the paintbrush with time, but if you were to get real up close, you'd see the shortcomings of it. Most of what I've found with brushes or cutting things, cutting implements, any sort of tool, it's less about what control you have and learning how to read how the tool is behaving and what is affecting it. How to position yourself. Animal Farm's good. I enjoyed Animal Farm because it was a very easy one-for-one, like, that's Stalin, that's Trotsky. These represent the workforce. These people are the pigs. Not great. And you can pop off the end with the classic woohoo. Well, I'll have to blow out the texture. I was paying absolutely no attention and traced over the pencil on the reverse side. Okay, well, it'll work. That's funny. I'll say it was intentional, but it was not. I thought what I was doing was tracing on this bit, but what I ended up with was I just had this flipped over. I've ripped paper before. Usually I give myself a little bit of leeway. This is a different mistake than I've made in the past. It's not the worst, but just gonna clean up some bits. And it's enough contrast to where it shouldn't affect stuff. I just can't really have the paper texture in the mix. And I gotta make sure that I clean this up decently. Do you guys get what I messed up on? Because I didn't realize until I went to take the paper off. I accidentally reversed it. And instead of tracing to a new piece of paper, I just outlined it on the reverse. Which is better than outlining it directly, because the fact that it's on the opposite side of the paper will dull the pencil marks. And the fact that I did this in pencil also is helpful. Mostly just want to make sure I don't have any weird edges in the faces, particularly. And I gotta make sure that I don't have any of these little eraser rubbings. Tracing paper is decently resilient. And maybe this will make for a slightly more interesting element of the time lapse. Not the worst thing to happen. Clean it up a bit. And I might have to do a little bit more cleanup digitally. Let's see. Happy Halloween, everyone. I don't have an eraser right now. Maybe I do. It's somewhere. But this is working fine. I mostly feel bad for kids for Halloween. This year would have been a banger because it's a Saturday. You can do Halloween stuff all night long. Get a bunch of candy, get hype. Might be a little bit cold. It got a little bit colder here today. That was always not a disappointment, but an unforeseen issue with trick-or-treating when I was younger, is you make your costume based on what costume you want, and you don't consider that it might be like in the 50s. I'm talking Fahrenheit. If it was 50s in Celsius, that would be absurd. And you'd be dead, right? It's like over 100 degrees. I don't know what 50 degrees Celsius is in Fahrenheit. Sad Halloween for... I've seen some things where some folks are doing like candy delivery tubes. Worst case scenario, I'd trace it again. But this one can sort of survive better as the outlines. Image capture, where's the other box? There it is. Show. So me taping that down was unnecessary, ultimately. Also, this is a mirror image of what I drew initially. I'm curious. I'm going to try flipping it. Once I scan it. Choose here. 31. Figures. Yeah, I'll make it 1200 for no reason. What I'm doing now is scanning the image, or scanning the drawing. And then I will fill in the solid sections digitally because this is a still and I don't really need to get the paper texture that I normally would want in animation, because when I animate you have sections grow and get smaller with the amount of ink that's on the page. So when you get a large section that has a lot of ink, the paper around it warps, and so if you have something where the ink is growing larger or smaller and how much space it has on the page, the paper around it warps, and that becomes part of the animation itself. Photoshop, yeah. Make sure I don't have anything. And I don't want to. But when it's just a still image, I don't have that same feeling of necessity in that way. Okay. And now we're going to jump this up. There are a few sections that might have some areas that complicate things. Darken this decently. Yeah, I'm gonna have some issue spots. And we're filling it in. Let's see. Okay. For the size and scale of where this, for how this is going to be displayed, like on Instagram, I don't really need to bother too much with the little elements of pencil marks, but you can see like right in here some pencil shows through, but when you get further out and you're viewing it at like this scale, you can't really see it. But I might try to clean some bits up. And for the shirt print, I'm just gonna blow it out. So anything that's this dark becomes quite dark. There's a good chance I'm gonna miss some lips. Okay, this isn't doing too bad as far as, there's a gap somewhere. Where is the gap? Okay, actually did fine. Any lips I'm missing? I'm gonna try and clean up this bit. It's a little bit more distracting in here. Any other particularly distracting sections? And I'm getting a few of these eraser bits. Yeah, that's what I was worried of. Those sorts of weird edges. Okay, Let me see what it looks like. I think it's mostly like that figure a little bit better. I don't think it's bad either way. Oh, and guess what? I did forget these lips. Any other lips? I don't think so. This will be a bit precarious. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So this for the moment, a little bit smaller this way. Small does it get? Cuff here. It's just from the top. Let's get 7 off the top. Pull this way down in size. And then 20 off the bottom. Okay. So we got that, turn on, that happens every time. Okay. Pull in this image. There you go. Made my mistakes along the way. That's okay. I can pay more attention next time. So let's see what this looks like. Just seeing what it looks like with different orientations. I think the default is the best. Okay. I use Photoshop and Premiere for the most part. I also use After Effects and Illustrator to a lesser degree. Right now for broadcasting this bit, I am using OBS is the program for that. I think it stands for Open Broadcast System. I'm not sure. While I'm thinking about this, I'm going to use this to pick up some of this eraser stuff. Sorry if that was a sudden loud noise. I can just see all the stuff. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Do my best to answer. It's hard to tell what's ink spatter and what's little bits of rubber from the eraser. Any questions on things? It will be available for a t-shirt. I'll get that up in a little bit. I'm gonna write today's date. 10/31/20. I like Shigeo Fukuda and Norman McLaren. There's a lot of folks that I just like sort of passively absorb, which isn't the best. As far as what they're working on. I animate at 15 frames per second typically. No, I left that off. I meant to turn that back on. Okay. Sorry for that noise. Just picking stuff up for no reason. Sometimes I'll go a little bit faster or slower if the animation isn't looking quite right otherwise. You can ask whatever question. If I'm not comfortable answering it, then I won't. That's my power, being in this situation. And you being an audience member. Depends on what tools you're using. I really like Sumi ink. That's what I use for this. That's this stuff. Yasutomi Sumi ink. It gets a solid sort of black to it, and works pretty well. It's not too thick or viscous, but it gets pretty solid black and a matte sort of appearance to it pretty easily. I like using technical pins repeatographs, and those you can't use Sumi ink in them. You have to use ink that's Forum. In this case, I've got repeatograph Ultra Draw, because Sumi ink dries differently. I don't know. I think Sumi ink is just water-based. I'm not sure. Hello, Your Glow. It dries sort of flaky. Like here's a bit of Sumi ink that's dried up, because I always pour too much. You can buy t-shirts on my website, which is TraceLoops.com, and then there's a store section. You can do a /store. If you live outside of the US, you can direct message me, and I'll let you know what the additional fees might be. It'll probably be between $5 and $30 more. Depends on what you're purchasing, how much, and how shipping works out. because if it's one of the shirts like this one, that it's fulfilled by a printing service that I'm using. Those are typically cheaper to ship internationally because they have printers that are located in different areas of the world, and just in general, they have better shipping prices for the most part. Where in the US, it's like $4, and then depending on state, there's some tax on there, but I just eat it out. I average it out, so wherever you are, the cost for you is the same. Starts at $23 and depends on the size. Oh, sorry. The second one, this is for technical pins. Let's see if I can get that in better focus for you. Or I can zoom in on it. That's going to be easier for me. It's not as detailed, but it doesn't have to be ultra draw necessarily. This was the one that I have currently, but that is for this pin, which the description is worn off of it, but it's a Koh-i-Noor, or I don't know if it's pronounced differently, repeatograph pin. It's a technical pin, and has a little nib, and you can go there. You can't use the Sumi ink for it because Sumi ink dries differently. If you are using fountain pens or nib pins, you can get Noodlers is a good black. And they've got a few different kinds. It gets pretty solid black, and they have a variety that's called bulletproof. That's just generally for different colors that Noodlers has, and that is means that it's waterproof. If you're looking for specifically waterproof ink, you should test out the Sumi ink first because it doesn't always react well to water after the fact. Most of the repeatograph inks that I use do decently. Also depends on what surface you're drawing on. I'll leave this up as a full bit for a second. But it's really a matter of choice. You gotta just test out some different inks, which isn't fun because ink can be expensive. If you're going for a bunch of cheap ink just to get more used to general calligraphy and stuff, you can get a larger bottle of Speedball for cheaper. Or you're in Belarus, I don't know what the cost of Speedball products are there because I think it's an American company. But this is a Japanese ink, so it's probably like an appropriate or a similar-ish sort of cost. For capturing physical animation, I like scanning things individually because you get much more of the texture of the paper. Because even with like this, you don't get too much of the texture and the up closeness of it. If you're capturing from it's a lot faster to use an overhead camera or something. You could also look into making your own ink, but everything I've seen about making your own ink gets expensive quickly. Depending on where you are, there might be, because ink has a lot of different applications around the world and different traditions with it. You could look into seeing if there's any Belarusian, I don't know what the term is, ink producers, which may be, again, more expensive. I don't know. I scan them on just a flatbed scanner. It's Canon CanoScan LIDE 440 or something. I forget, but it's a Canon scanner. Belarusian. I don't know if there are any Belarusian ink production things. There might be. I've never looked into it. I've just gotten the Sumi ink and Speedball Repeatograph. Koh-i-Noor is a German company, so I don't know if German products might be cheaper. I really don't know what the price is. But if you're going for a faster capture, sorry, I'm jumping between questions. But there are programs that are used for stop action animation that it just remotely controls camera and you just capture and then you could replace with the next one. So if you're looking for speed and you have a decent camera setup where you're happy with the photographs that are being taken, then that's easier. I've been animating traditionally in some capacity. I don't have like a direct start point because I did flipbooks when I was younger. In middle school, I don't know where you are and what your school system, like the education things, what they're referred to as. But that would be like early teen. So like, how old are you when you go into sixth grade? Anyway, that's when I sort of started. I did a little bit of Macromedia Flash. I do not know Anna Molina. Let's type it in. I did some Macromedia Flash. Oh wait, is this someone? I think I might follow. Yeah. Okay, this is someone that I read their name differently. I do know Anna Molina. I just always read her name as like Annex or Annex. Yeah, I followed her on Tumblr, and then now follow her on Instagram as well. In high school, I did a lot of Flash animation, and a lot of it was kind of dumb. Yep, that's a good example of me misreading someone's name and just assuming based on what I read, like the first whatever number of times into their username. I started following her on Tumblr. I'm still on Tumblr pretty actively, more so personally than I still upload things. But anyway, yeah, high school Macromedia Flash, but now that's both not the company that owns Flash. Now it's an Adobe program, but also it's just not nearly as relevant as it used to be. Most people now who are doing similar sort of styles, because everything's being exported to video and not being saved for Flash websites and such, they'll use After Effects. I get confused reading everyone's different questions and such. But I did flipbooks and some Flash, but even in Flash, a lot of the time I would do frame by frame because the tweening never had the pacing that I liked. I'm not in Germany. I'm jumping all over the place. I have visited Germany, but I've never lived there. The only place that I've lived other than the United States was on a Navy base in the Bahamas for a few months when I was younger because my mom lived there. Flash is dead. If you're doing traditional animation and you want to do a digital work but use a stylus or something like that, I prefer using Photoshop nowadays. I like an ongoing animation I did a while ago where I just sort of forced myself to revisit something if I wasn't working on something else that was just abstracted and just kept going and I didn't have a destination for it. I really like a performance piece that I did that's called it Falling Faces, If you search Falling Faces TraceLoops Vimeo, it should pop up. It's like 13 minutes long, and I did a second version of it but didn't record it. That is like a live painting thing that's paired with animation and sound production. It's a little bit longer of a watch. The actual performance doesn't really start until like 2 minutes into it, but the live performance had to sort of settle it into stuff. And then I also really like, there's a bunch of sort of animated faces I did for that I was doing on my own and then repurposed for something of a music video. For Shigeto, if you search, I combined look and search at the same time. If you look up Shigeto Pulse TraceLoops, okay, yeah, you can watch that Falling Faces piece. That's another one that I enjoy. That one came out of trying to force myself to work on something daily, and the idea of having traditionally animated stuff function for live performances, because I've had some people who like my style and aesthetic and want to use it for live performances, but it doesn't work the best because it's such a slow, arduous process to create traditional animation that's frame by frame and exists in a physical space. That's drawn out frame by frame and have that cater to the improvisational nature of live musical performance. So the idea for that was creating, it's where some of the recent animation concepts came out of, and just I redid them for this format. And the idea was to have a starting point that was the same face drawing, and it would start and end the exact way. It would have a face, and the first frame and the last frame would be essentially the same, and it was a loop. But then you have a collection of animations where that same starting point is the same starting point for all the animations. So you have these different effects happening, and the animations are different time lengths. And you just have this library where you can throw in and loop that same loop, like that's a 1 second long loop 30 times, and it's just like the face warps a little, the same way, and then it eventually shifts into, you replace that video with a different one, and then it's a seamless transition because it starts at that same entry point, and then it loops through that, and you have a new animation that seamlessly transitions out of it. And you can combine it in different ways, and you can have a library of things where you have things where it's like, this is the pace of this animation, it goes with the RPM of this song, throw that in a bunch of times. And then you have elements where the performer has some change of pace or some variation on the song, and you accommodate that in a live setting, but it has that same seamless look to it, and it gives a surreal sort of in-between of the very set in stone aspects of hand-drawn animation, where it has to be done and planned out, not weeks in advance, but kind of. But it reflects the live elements as well. So yeah, but never ended up having like the right budget or application for it, because you're creating a library of like 30 plus animations, and so no one really had the right budget for creating live things in that way. But I had that sort of inspiration and did that, and then purposed it for a a lower budget sort of thing because I just already had this collection of items, of face loops, as I was calling them, and just doing one every day. And I had like 20 of them that I purposed into not exactly a music video, but for Shigeto Pulse. Shigeto is the musician's name. And then Pulse is the song. Sorry for going on that bit. I just wanted to go on it. I have merchandise in the form of t-shirts primarily. I don't make the most money off of selling the art directly. It's more through commissions for brands, musicians, production companies for use in social situations. When I incubate ideas, it's more of I can visualize stuff in my head. Sometimes it doesn't work out as I want it to. It's helpful for me sometimes to create something digitally that is a proof of concept and then execute it on paper after the fact, so that I can iron out any of those issues. When I work in a digital space, a lot of the time there are weird edges or pixels or things that are harsh edges that I sort of sand over and clear out when I transition to drawing it directly on paper. Thanks for tuning in, Froggy Person. Hope high school's going all right. My high school experience was okay. I mostly kept to myself. I don't typically storyboard because my animations are very short form. It's all just not the way that I've learned how to do animation. It's not the most practical, and it doesn't work well in longer form situations, or if you're trying to tell a story that has a narrative to it. I have done some things that are like maybe a minute or two long, and for those I just sort of have to, if I want to maintain my style and aesthetic as it exists currently, I'm only really comfortable going in a linear motion when I'm producing the animation, which means I just sort of have to grit and bear the issues that come up with that, where if there are portions leading up to a section that have to be changed, I just have to change all the results of it, because if it is that linear motion, if something changes here, it affects everything else along that pathway, which I like in the production of things, how that interacts and produces work, and I think it's part of the aesthetic of what I'm creating, but it can be difficult in a situation where I'm creating work for someone or a brand or something. I haven't done too much. Most of the time, for music stuff, it doesn't work out, or I create a loop, and that's sort of how it manifests itself. Short form, and then loops and goes for longer period of time. You have to figure out your balance, whether or not the money outweighs your interest in the music and respect for the craft on their end. It's a balance. I've done things where I will take a pay cut if I want to work on a project, or things where if you don't want to work on something, up your price, and to a point where you're willing to forego whatever things you dislike about the music or the artist or whatever. If it's worth it monetarily, just jack up your price and see if they are willing to pay it. And if they are, then you've made that choice based on your own things, and you can't really get you can get frustrated and mad, but you can't find any fault in that uh, artist or musician or producer or whatever because you made that choice earlier on. There can be unforeseen circumstances that negatively affect your experience of that project, and that's just something that I think you have to learn to anticipate a bit. I don't have any books for business for artists. It's just a learning experience where it's the sort of thing that, like, regardless of what people tell you, you're likely to make the mistakes. It's like if the most common sort of thing that I see as far as both personal and uh, interpersonal experiences is that you sort of have to learn things for yourself. And the best illustration that I see of that, or being blind to your own experience until you look at it after the fact or from an outside perspective sort of deal, is any sort of romantic relationships. I've been dumb in romantic relationships, and you can't see how ill-fitting or just that it's not working in whatever way until you're out of it. And then you're like, oh, I see that now. I am able to recognize that that wasn't going to work. But when you're in the middle of it, you're like, this is perfect. I'm not happy, but this is perfect. And I think you get a little bit of that in all facets of life, whatever relationships, professional or personal. Is that hindsight's that 2020 thing, which is cliche, but there's also like things are cliche because they're true sometimes. Not all the time. But yeah, anything with relationships, you just have to sort of experience it for yourself, because no matter how many times or who tells you, there are certain things that you just sort of have to learn on your own. And that is true from my experiences with dealing with producing art for clients. That you're like, this seems perfect. I can't see anything wrong in it. Maybe it'll go bad, but it's gotta go good. And then sometimes it does. I don't know. It's a mixed bag. Yeah. It's really easy to get hyper-focused on anything, at least for me. And then you don't see any sort of larger picture. Never really watched BoJack Horseman, but I do enjoy a screen cap that I saw where it's talking about like a relationship after the fact or something, and they're saying that what is it? That's the problem with rose-colored glasses, or like, I should have seen all the red flags, and the response is like, that's the problem with rose-colored glasses. When you have rose-colored glasses, all the flags just look like regular flags, because all the flags look the same because it's rose tinted. So all the red flags, it's much better written than my recollection of it. Anyway, it's about 5:30 now. I talked for a bit. Seems like it was more talking at the tail end. Any last questions? I'll give it like a couple minutes and then head out and prep this stuff for shirts and social posts. I get to cut a long amount off the tail end of this because I've been talking for a sec. Then I will heat up some soup and have some dinner. But any other questions on things? I'll upload this, including the talking bit, to YouTube, or the discussion element onto YouTube. If you want to watch Falling Faces, that's on Vimeo. Search Falling Faces TraceLoops, should pop up. You also might get some other work in there. If you want to see that video I was talking about, you can do Shigeto Pulse TraceLoops, because there is just like a still image video that also exists where it just has the music. If you want to go to my web store, That's traceloops.com/store. Or this is my website. You can go to traceloops.com. I need to update it sometime soonish. Christmas, if you want to buy things for Christmas, I'd suggest doing it sooner because all the production company stuff is going to get tied up, and mailing is kind of messed up right now, and the influx of mail, because people are going to be shipping a lot more and not seeing people in person, there are going to be delays and stuff's going to go slower than you think it will. So prep for that just in your personal lives as well. I can try to work out some stickers. You were asking about those. I'll be staying at home Christmas time is the plan. I was just walking outside recently, going to the grocery store or to the post office or my doctor's appointment. Anyway, it was cold out, and I just thought, oh, this is going to get bad soon. You can ask a more business type question. I don't know where, you know where the hose are? They're in the gardening center. But, oh, but it was, I don't know what sorry. I got a text, and there's probably some context that I forgot about, but it confused me. You can ask a business type question, and I'll do my best to answer. What was the other thing? Oh, it was cold out, and I thought about restaurants are going to have to change back. I have a girlfriend. She's at home currently, and will be for a while, because she went home to prep for holidays. I am from North America. I'm from America, or the United States. Seems like a pretty American thing to say. Ask someone who is. It's like, how do you feel when North or United States citizens say they're from America when America is just like a general thing? I'm like, it's weird because it's also just named after a map maker dude. I am not the best at making those sorts of connections. I started off making connections in digital spaces primarily, mostly with other creators, because I was interested in connecting with them when I was in college. I didn't think about the prospect of making money off of things. I just was interested in generating a following just because I liked that attention in that capacity. And so I just messaged people that I liked if they showed any sort of interaction with my work. So I just kept up with that and created a little bit more of some relationships there. I've done some weird things reaching out to companies, and I think I got recognized in that. Northern United States. That wasn't necessarily like an intentional thing for how I pursued or found connections. But slight follow up is very good. Like, I'm not as good at it as I used to be because I'm like, I know people. I don't have to say hello or be like, thanks for reaching out or that sort of deal. But that's helpful, and being memorable is just if you meet with someone, reconnect with them the next day. Email, text, something. Some people might find it annoying, but it's not. It's unlikely that you'd have a great relationship with that sort of person if they didn't like you following up, and that's how you're building a connection. Have something to point to that's easily digestible. I've over time realized that a lot of artists that I know of both historically and otherwise. Um, that you identify them as like a one word sentence. It's like, who's Picasso? You know, the guy who did all the faces and like moved faces around. You never go like, here's his full body of work, or like, who's Roy Lichtenstein? Oh, that's the dude who did comics, but big. But they did a lot of other work. Or who's Calder? And it's like, he made the big mobiles, but he also did a bunch of other work. Who's Da Vinci? Mona Lisa, but he did a bunch of other work. Who's Barbara Kruger? You know, the text lady. Who's Cindy Sherman? She did the photographs. Like there's, or like who's Shepard Fairey? Obey or the Obama poster? Like you end up really reducing people, and if you can create something where you are distinct and quickly identifiable, that's very helpful in selling yourself to and selling your work um, in any capacity or any sort of area, or just something weird and memorable. Hello in Colombia. Rockwell. I'm drawing a blank on. Talking about Norman Rockwell. Like he's the guy who made the Americana, and I think about two paintings of his. Uh, there's the Night Watch or Nighthawk. I forget. And okay, Norman Rock. I'm thinking of the right guy, right? I had named off some people that I just was like, oh, I'm only naming male artists, which is why I was like, oh, I got to do some Barbara Kruger. There's a lot of artists, but you end up reducing people that are complex, and then you can research more or have a more nuanced relationship with people as you get to know them. But if you're able to be like, I make a lot of work outside of TraceLoops things where it's much harder to immediately identify because it's more influenced by sort of group cultural things, internet culture, stuff like that, where there's a lot more picking and choosing of little bits of things and producing work that is much more based on personal experience or selfish sorts of things. But this, you have black and white figures, hand drawn, characters, and they're elements that have been developed enough to where they're pretty quickly recognizable. And yeah. But if you can produce something where it's memorable, simple, identifiable, then people will be it'll be easier to find professional work, is my experience. But I think a lot of that comes from studying graphic design, and the idea there being that it's immediately recognizable and simplified to a degree where people are less likely to interpret it as anything other than your intended message. And that's true in a lot of advertising. So if you're doing work where you're trying to advertise yourself as something that can be consumed or repurposed, conveying a message quickly and clearly that doesn't have a lot of leeway in how it's interpreted. If you're looking for commercial work, it's practical there. And luck. It's the dumb part about it, that it's a lot of luck and just knowing the right person who might put you forward to the right person, who connects you to the right person. uh, relationships that are pre-existing. You can overcome that to a degree by in, where you might not have as much immediate luck, but you can put yourself out there more frequently, where you hear a lot of stories about people who had what seems like dumb luck, like they just happened upon this person, but also with a lot of those occasions, it's people who put themselves in situations where that lucky situation might happen frequently. And so let's say that you have like a 10% chance of something going through. You only have 10% chance if you do it one time. But let's say you do it 100 times. You have a 10% chance each time, but you increase your likelihood of it happening 100-fold. So, yeah. Thank you. That's nice. Yeah, you don't know what will and won't connect you to the right people until it's already happened. So just do as much as you can. Follow up. And be nice to folks. That's just my general. You should be nice to folks. I don't think that's necessarily going to help you in business, but I like it. And it makes it easier for me to exist in the world because of my conscience. Okay, that was like another 15 minutes. This will be more a discussion bit. Any final questions? I gotta get out of here soon. If you want to listen more to this discussion or listen to it again. I need to get better at rephrasing questions in my answers for YouTube. It's coming to evening here in the Northeast United States. Oh yeah, daylight savings time is tonight. So if you're watching internationally and you do not have daylight savings time, I'm going to be starting an hour later for your time. Starting tomorrow. Because tonight at 2 a.m., time's gonna jump back to 1 a.m. for a dumb thing. Doesn't really have relevance. I'm not doing Twitch currently. If Instagram ever kicks me off of this format, then I will switch over there. I just haven't settled into that space as much, and I have a much larger following here on Instagram than I do on Twitch. But if I do switch to Twitch, you'll get a horizontal video feed. But again, I'll just format it the same. Just I need to reset up my live stream setup in there. Oh, I didn't know. Well, it's tonight at 2 a.m. And so if you're trying to tune into this, you can look up what time it is in New York. And 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time is what time I broadcast. Okay, again, thank you all for watching. This will go up on YouTube. I'll make this into a shirt that you can buy if you live outside of the US. Direct message me or email me. Someone did email me from Germany and I need to follow up with them. I gotta jump back to see what you had said. I can ship internationally. It might be more expensive. I can see that in a relationship that it's more important to be facing the same direction than to necessarily be focused on one another. Depends on your relationship. Things work and don't work in whatever relationship as long as you. Okay, I will email you back. I can ship to you. I need to clarify what it is that you're interested in purchasing. I meant to respond. Sorry about that. Um, some shirts, like these design shirts that I've been doing on live streams, those will be those will be $28 each. But if you want to buy uh, shirts that I've printed personally that I have here, then the cost goes up because I have to deal with personally shipping things, and the minimum on those shipping internationally is like $20. And if you're getting like two shirts, then it jumps up another $10 because it's got weight classes. Okay, that was a lot of talking. Thank you all for watching. YouTube, tip, tab, at store. Anyway, talk to you later, I guess. Maybe. That's how I end phone calls. I'm gonna head out now. Adios.